Hello, and welcome to another Tactical Corner here on SkaredCast. Today we see the action-packed battle report between the Space Wolves and the Drukhari on an asteroid field. So, let's stay tuned because it really shows how a table can really affect the game. Hello and welcome to another Tactical Corner here on SkaredCast with Skari, your grateful host. And today we jump right into the action with the latest battle report, which you can see the link down below if you want to watch it, where a 1500 point Space Wolf army faced off against a 1500 point army of Drukhari. And we begin the game by discussing a little bit about the table itself and the armies. So, let's jump into the Space Wolves. Now, my opponent and I had decided to play a thematic game, where the Space Wolves are trying to defend an asteroid field against a Dark Eldar onslaught. So, the main stipulation for the game was that every single model in our army had to have some sort of helmet or anything like that, as they are technically fighting in space. This limited our collections somewhat. I wasn't able to take Hellions or Witches, and he really wasn't able to use some of his characters that are unhelmeted. So that was a thematic-y thing that we had put in play. Now the mission was basic retrieval. 4 objectives on different parts of the battlefield or the asteroid belt. And in order for ease of gameplay, we decided to set the table on its lowest setting, aka the asteroids become big hills, and you can kind of get across from one to the other without too much hassle. Of course, having armies that fly really do help. The Space Wolves set up in a very defensive position. Since we were playing Vanguard Strike, he really wanted to kind of sit back, and I feel that his placement was a little off. You know, he put his Stormwolf in a position that was rather vulnerable to my shooting, being able to be seen by most of my lances if I went first or when I went first. And the blood claws in his characters were really a little bit out of place way back in the backfield. On the contrary, the Dark Eldar have a distinct advantage on this table. So knowing that, I placed my flyers and my raiders in positions where they could maneuver quickly and get to where they needed to go early in the game. Now, using fly and being able to use the asteroids for line of sight blocking, I was going to be able to bring my firepower to bear on every section of the enemy army. Now, this meant though that I couldn't get complacent. My first turn I had to be rather aggressive with my forces, and the biggest target that I needed to get rid of was indeed that Stormwolf or the big gunship. Being one of the only models in my opponent's army that could fly, I definitely wanted to make sure that I took it out early on. Now, my biggest asset in this game were going to be my Ravager and my my Razorwing jet fighter, as they're the ones that have the power to deal the damage and really fly around the table out of the enemy's threat range. Now, on the first turn, I got really aggressive, and my opponent did what I expected him to do. He ran out and really kind of blew up my Raider with the Incubi. Now, it says that you're not allowed, I think the FAQ, somebody stated that you're not allowed to soul burst when a transport dies, and that's something that I wasn't aware of. If that was the case, then I did misplay the Incubi. But their purpose was simple: to get into the enemy army quickly and really start causing some havoc. Now, the Incubi just did absolute work on that flank, and I believe that it was because of them that the tide of battle really turned. Even though they all died in the end except for the Visarch, I was able to kind of cleave through that whole section of the enemy army with little to no damage to my own forces. Incubi are one of those units, tactically, that in 7th edition you never really saw, but in 8th edition they really come into their own with the ability to just mow down enemy infantry. And because they were Inari, you know, as they got killed or killed things, they would become better and better as well. So they mowed down all the Grey Hunters, and then they moved in to see the Intercessors and a Lieutenant, and essentially just took that entire flank out completely. This relieved pressure on not only my Dire Avengers when they were on the objective, but also on the rest of my army that ended up going around and dealing with the forces on the opposite flank, which was where my Archons were. Now, my opponent did place his reserves on the second turn, and I believe that he could have more than likely done more damage with them had he placed them a little bit further away from my lines, using the 18-inch range on his guns to the full capacity to prevent me from counter-attacking them later in the second turn. Now, my Dire Avengers did die pretty quickly. Those heavy bolters are brutal, and I could have applied better strategic thinking when using the Dire Avengers or putting them in cover, so that it would have been more odds of them surviving an initial heavy bolter onslaught. Now, all in all, once my Visarch and the Incubi had kind of cleaned that flank up, it was a matter of just sweeping around, and the Visarch ended up going all the way around the table and almost making it to the battlefield on the other flank completely on foot, which was kind of exciting to me, considering he's not exactly a very fast super character. Now, I didn't have any witches this game, or Hellions, and I really like the versatility of witches and Hellions in game. And really, I feel like I could have done a lot better had I brought some of those units to the battle. But, of course, it's space. My Visarch, it's the first time I've really used him in-game in 8th edition, and I really, really liked how tough he is. The FAQ has given him a 4+ invulnerable save, and with a 3+ armor save, a 4+ invulnerable save, and the ability to regain wounds, he is one of the toughest characters that the Inari or Inari detachment can field, or even an Eldari army can field as well. So not bad for a close combat character that can go around killing stuff. So I was excited to really see that guy in practice. Now, my Ravager was shooting a lot, but don't forget the tanks can charge. And I was able to tie up the heavy bolter marines and even try get it in combat with my shock prow, which is a cool little upgrade that allows one attack from the Dark Eldar army to hit an enemy and then do D3 wounds if it gets through. And this multiple damage attack is 1 point to put on a tank, and it was worth its weight in gold, taking out that last heavy bolter jump infantry. So we move into the end game, and at the end of the game, things look pretty bleak for the Space Wolves. And this meant that my Scourge and my other infantry were really doing some work on that flank by the space station, or the space port. And even though my enemy fought heroically, I feel like it was mostly the initial turns that really turned the tide of the game early on. And I feel my opponent could have deployed a little better to prevent such a sweep on the flank. And essentially, I was able to get on the objectives and really put the pressure on, and it was hard for my opponent to come back from that after my Visarch and Incubi just annihilated his entire flank. Let me know what you think down below. This was a very cool narrative style game. The table definitely benefited my army over my opponent's army, but let me know how you would have played this game as well. Would have you taken something differently? Would have you deployed differently? Would have you had different target priority? Leave a comment down below and let me know what you think. Of course, this is Skari, your grateful host, Please support on Patreon if you'd like to see more content like this, and leave a like, share, and subscribe. This is your host, Skari, out.